When I started babysitting, the parents gave me a horrifying set of rules. I thought I hit the jackpot when a rich family paid me $200 to babysit their child for a night. I never could have guessed this would have led to my life being ruined forever. The children were extremely well behaved and everything went smoothly the first night. The young couple must have thought that I had done a good job because word spread quickly around the rich neighborhood that I was a great babysitter choice. This was perfect for me. Most of the families around here pay way better than where I live since they all come from a long line of wealthy families, but I was always suspicious about some of the families. You hear rumors about really rich people, some very creepy stories, but I never actually believed any of them. Sometimes I'll babysit for a few hours and make a couple $100. Other times the parents want me to stay the night while they go off and get a hotel room so that they could be away from their kids for a change. That is where I make the big bucks. A couple of days ago, a husband and wife had texted me asking if I could stay the night at their mansion and watch their 7-year-old little girl for them. I happily agreed, not knowing this might be the last time I ever see the outside world again. When the day finally came, I drove my beat-up Jeep Wrangler to the edge of the rich neighborhood and made my way up this private driveway that I had never noticed before because the entrance was hidden back amongst the trees that surround the entire north side of town. I drove up this steep, winding driveway for what seemed like 10 minutes before I finally saw the house come into view. Out of all the houses I've babysat at, this was hands down the most gorgeous one I've ever seen. I hoped I would get some good money for this. I got out of my car and made my way up to the front porch, where I knocked on this gigantic wooden door. A few seconds later, a beautiful woman in her mid-30s answered and introduced herself as Mrs. Collins. She called her husband down, and shortly after an extremely handsome man, also in his 30s, came walking down the grand stairway, holding an adorable little girl in his arms. The couple seemed very anxious to leave, and even though they were both gorgeous people, I could tell that underneath all of their beauty, they were both extremely tired and haggard from having to keep up with their 7-year-old. They were obviously very excited about having an entire night to themselves, and couldn't wait to get out of there as fast as they could. Before Mr. and Mrs. Collins left, however, Mrs. Collins handed me several pieces of paper and told me that she had written down a couple of instructions for me to follow throughout the night. She stressed to me how important it was to follow her instructions, and I assured her that I'd give them a look. I waved to the pretty young couple as they made their way down the driveway in their expensive Mercedes, and then closed the door behind me. I gave the instructions a quick once-over before folding the papers and stuffing them into my back pocket. I'll look at them later, I told myself. How stupid I was to do that. Mr. and Mrs. Collins' daughter Samantha was a very nice young girl who warmed up to me almost immediately, or so I thought. We had spent the next few hours playing games and watching TV. After we finished our 5th episode of Teen Titans Go, I noticed that it was getting late and asked Samantha what her bedtime was. She shrugged, not really giving me an answer, which is when I remembered Mrs. Collins' instructions. I pulled out the folded pieces of paper and scanned through them very quickly when I saw the words, "Samantha needs to be in bed before 8 p.m. I checked the time to find that it was almost 7:45. "Well, it looks like your bedtime is right now." I said, lift Samantha up off the couch so I could get her ready. She brushed her teeth and I tucked her into her California king-sized mattress. I told her goodnight and was leaving her room when she said something that stopped me in my tracks. "Don't forget to lock my door before you leave," she said. I stopped walking and turned back around toward her, confused. "What do you mean, don't forget to lock your door?" I asked. "Why would I need to lock your door? What if you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night?" She looked at me innocently and shrugged her shoulders again. "I don't know, but Mommy always locks my door before I go to sleep. She says she does it to protect me and herself. I don't remember what happens after I fall asleep, but Mommy says that I always try to leave my room at night, which is a bad thing." I looked at her dumbfounded. I didn't know what to say. What sort of parents would lock their child in their room at night? "Mommy told me that she would leave instructions for you to follow, and locking my door is one of them," she said. I had forgotten to read the rules. "Oh, okay, Samantha, I'll lock your door." "Good. Good night, sweetheart," I stammered. She gave me a big smile and rolled over in her bed. I closed her door and noticed that there was a latch drilled into the door frame that would allow someone to lock it from the outside. I closed the latch and then walked back downstairs so I could read the rest of Mrs. Collins' instructions. When I had first seen the pieces of paper, I was under the impression that they were just instructions that told me what shows Samantha is not allowed to watch or how to operate the surround sound. After I started reading them, though, I realized that I was wrong. I was completely and utterly wrong. I started reading Hello Annie. "I'm so glad that you agreed to stay the night and babysit Samantha for us. She's such an angel, and I'm sure that the both of you will get along very well. I know that our house might seem old and scary, but don't worry because nothing bad will happen to you as long as you follow some simple instructions. Firstly, Samantha needs to be in bed in her room with the door locked before 8 p.m. Do not open up her bedroom door after 8 p.m. I repeat, do not open Samantha's bedroom door after 8 p.m. She will try to convince you to open the door in many different ways. She will cry, scream, and threaten you until you give in, but do not listen to her. She can't hurt you as long as the door is closed." At this point, I was confused. Why would I leave her locked in there if she was screaming and crying to let her out? Something horribly wrong was going on here, but I continued reading. "Between 8:30 and 9:30 p.m., make sure you remain in the living room with the lights turned on. Around this time of night, you may hear scratching and growling coming from Samantha's room or from other parts of the house. These noises are nothing to worry about as long as you stay in the living room. Watch some TV to pass the time. We have a lot of movies to choose from. After 9:30, do not venture into any dark areas of the house. I would recommend that you turn on as many lights as you can before 9:30 so that you don't accidentally trap yourself. You might also happen to see a pair of yellow cat eyes looking at you through the darkness every once in a while. Do not stare at them for more than 30 seconds. These rules were getting more effed up by the second. I started sweating, my body feeling glued to the floor as I read over the strict but extremely terrifying rules that were put in place. Why had I agreed to take this job? At around 10 p.m., it might begin to sound like there are several people walking around in the basement downstairs. Do not worry, because as long as you stay out of the basement, they cannot get to you. I know it sounds unlikely, but around this time you will begin to feel an overwhelming urge to walk down into the basement. If this happens, go into the kitchen and drink a cold glass of milk. This usually helps. The urge will most likely pass after about 10 minutes, but if the urge is still there after 10 minutes and you don't think that you will be able to stop yourself from walking into the basement, then call either me or Mr. Collins, and we'll tell you what to do. Now this next part is very important. You will be sleeping in our guest room upstairs for the night. Before you go to bed, make sure that you leave a plate outside your bedroom door with a piece of raw steak on it. You can find the raw steak in our refrigerator, and leave a glass of milk next to the plate as well. And that's about it. Final rule, don't eat meat after 8 o'clock. They might see it as a threat and will most likely attack you. P.S. Throughout the night you might hear a dog whimpering from somewhere off inside the house. We don't have a dog, so don't go looking for it. I hadn't realized what I had gotten myself into. Right as I had finished reading the rules, it was 8:31, and the growling noises just started. It sounded like they were coming from every room in the effing house. My hands were shaking as I reread the instructions, the realization of what I was dealing with sinking in. I was trapped in a house with something that was far from normal. The growling noises were getting louder and seemed to be coming from every room. I forced myself to calm down, taking deep breaths. I had to follow the rules no matter how bizarre they were. Over the next few hours, things only got stranger and more terrifying. The growling turned into scratching, and sometimes I would hear what sounded like a soft whimpering, like a dog. But I remembered Mrs. Collins's postscript. They didn't have a dog. I stayed in the living room, keeping the lights on as instructed, and waited. The urge to go down to the basement was strong, but I fought against it, going into the kitchen and gulping down glasses of milk. Around 10 p.m., I heard the sounds of footsteps in the basement, but I didn't go down there. I stayed put, watching TV to distract myself from the cacophony. It was during one of these distractions that I noticed a different piece of paper on the coffee table, a sheet that had been tucked away under a magazine. It was a diet plan for Samantha, written in Mrs. Collins's neat handwriting. My heart skipped a beat as I read through it. It was a weekly meal plan, but it wasn't the usual fare you'd feed a 7-year-old. Liver on Monday, kidneys on Wednesday, heart on Friday. It was a diet composed of human organs. My stomach churned as the horrifying truth hit me. Samantha wasn't just some ordinary child. She was something else. As the realization dawned on me, I heard a loud crash from upstairs. It sounded like a door being broken down. The noise was followed by the soft padding of feet on the staircase. Samantha. I could hear her humming a lullaby as she descended, her voice echoing through the eerily silent house. My heart pounded in my chest as I stood rooted to the spot, my mind racing. I thought back to Mrs. Collins's instructions, her insistence that I follow them exactly, but it was too late for that now. I had made a terrible mistake, and now I was about to pay the price. I could hear Samantha getting closer, her humming growing louder. It was then that I realized the horrifying truth. I wasn't here to babysit Samantha. I was here to feed her. I was the meal. My sister went missing 2 years ago. Today I found her secret diary. I loved her more than anyone else, but after finding out why she went missing, I think I might be in danger too. She had just graduated college when she went missing, not even giving me a chance to say goodbye to her. I was filled with anger and misery. The police officers searched frantically, yet were unable to find any clues. However, this is when things started getting weird. After a while of searching, I noticed the officers and investigators referring to my sister Leah in the past tense instead of the present tense. And then I noticed my parents doing it too. They were talking about her as if they knew something about her disappearance. Odd, but at the time I brushed it off as nothing. Until now. I was 19 at the time. I ended up falling out with my parents after Leah died, since we would just argue all day without Leah acting as a mediator. I started busking on the street, barely making enough money between that and odd jobs to afford a trash little apartment. I didn't speak to my parents for over a year after Leah's disappearance, until a few months ago. They apologized, I apologized, and after a bit of hesitant communication, they asked me to come home and visit. If only I'd known this would be my last time visiting home. There'd still been no sign of her over the years, no sort of closure. Like the officers and my parents, I'd begun thinking of my determined, wonderful older sister in the past tense. I guess she could still be alive out there. Technically anything is possible, but everything in me tells me that she's not dead. I avoided her room for the first few days. I was afraid of what I'd find there. Would it hurt more if my parents kept it exactly the same, or if they turned it into something else? I didn't know, and I didn't want to ask. We didn't even talk about Leah, but last night I couldn't sleep. Leah's room was right next to mine. Have you ever experienced silence so profound that it seemed loud? The silence from Leah's room drilled into my ears until my head ached. Finally I stood up. This wasn't going to go away if I ignored it. As it turned out, neither of my fears were quite right. The room wasn't exactly as Leah had left it. Mom and Dad used it for storage, apparently. There were boxes stacked on the floor and an old sewing machine in one corner. But Leah's bed still sat against the wall. Her desk still sat by the window. I sat heavily in her desk chair, heart aching. I just wanted my sister back. At the very least, I wanted to know what happened to her. The desk had a little cubby for books, still full of Leah's notebooks. I skimmed through them with my fingertips, reading the covers of each one. English comp, journalism, marketing, math. I laughed reading math, knowing how much she hated that class. I missed her so much. The last notebook's cover was blank. I pulled it out, curiosity getting the better of me. I flipped it open to a random page and was met with lines of my sister's neat handwriting. My own name jumped out at me from the page. I started reading. Naomi sent me a recording of her newest song. It was really good. I'm glad that she's still playing, even with her classes. My eyes watered, and I reached up to brush away the tears before they could land on the page and smear it. The notebook turned out to be half diary, half dream journal. I felt myself getting sucked in. Leah had a way with words. But then, about a month before she disappeared, the tone of the diary entries changed. That's really the best way I can describe it. And since I don't have my sister's way with words, I continued reading, with the next page showing a dream journal and diary entry. May 30th. Last night's dream. I sat in a cottage like something out of a fairy tale. A woman sat across from me. I don't remember all the details, but I remember that her black hair was straight and so long that it pooled on the floor. And I remember the words we exchanged perfectly. She said, "Give me your name, child." And I told her, "Leah." She smiled, revealing teeth that seemed just a little too white to be natural. "Leah," she said, like she was tasting it. "That will do nicely." For some reason, I woke up shivering. I've never had a nightmare that weird before. Didn't really do too much today, but we visited Grandpa in the evening. His mind is barely there since he's getting old. When Mom walked into his room, he smiled and called her Mary, which isn't her name. He has dementia, so he finds it hard. Now he's called Mom every name under the sun at this point. Barbara, Denise, Sandra, whatever. She always takes it in stride. Sure, you can tell it hurts a little, but she knows he doesn't mean it. She always just laughs it off and reminds him, "No, Dad, it's Gina, remember?" But she didn't do that this time. She stumbled back like he'd slapped her, and tears welled up in her eyes. She had to rush from the room before she started sobbing. I tried to go after her, but Dad put a hand on my shoulder, told me that he'd take care of it, and that I shouldn't mention it to her when I got back. It really left some kind of bad taste in my mouth. I don't know. Something was wrong. I wiped the tears from my eyes as I read. My granddad is gone now, but he was lovely. I wish my sister had just spoken to me about her nightmares and her problems. Maybe I could have helped her, but I continued reading, terrified of what was going to come next. June 3rd. Mom's been acting weird. Ever since that thing with Grandpa happened, she's been weird, nervous, on the verge of tears. It feels like she's avoiding people, avoiding me at least. She walks out of the room whenever I walk into it. Dad won't tell me anything. So with nowhere else to turn, I decided to call in the big guns. I called Aunt Emily. Aunt Emily knows all the family gossip and can't resist sharing it at literally the slightest provocation. So I knew that if anyone would be able to tell me who Mary is, it would be her. She got really quiet as soon as I asked, though. She asked, "Where did you hear that name?" After I explained what happened, she sighed. "Your poor mother," she said. "Mary was her older sister. She went missing. Lord, it must have been decades ago by now. They were really very close, heartbreaking. I didn't know what to say. Mom always told us that she was an only child. I get not wanting to talk about something that was traumatic, but outright lying. I want to know more about this." I stopped reading. It was getting harder and harder each page I read. My mother had a lost sister that I never knew about, and my sister didn't know about either. Why does my family have so many secrets? I still needed clues to where she went missing, so I continued. June 6th. I finally found something on Mary. Google had nothing. Libraries had nothing. But eventually, I remembered those commercials for that Ancestry website that's supposed to help you find news and records of old relatives and stuff, and I tried that. That actually turned something up. A small obituary for Mary Bennett. The obituary explained that while no evidence of Mary's death was ever found, after so many years with no leads or contact, the family has decided to declare her dead. The obituary was their attempt to move on. My heart sank, reading that. I couldn't imagine how that must feel, to lose someone and never get any closure. Is that why Mom lied? I wanted to understand, but I couldn't. If it had been Naomi, it would hurt to lose her, hurt in a way that I can't even put into words. But I don't think I'd be able to pretend that she didn't exist. I'd have to keep her memory alive somehow. I don't know. I'm not judging or anything, or I'm not trying to, but I don't understand. So later on, I went back on that Ancestry website. I don't really know why. I just keep trying to wrap my head around all of this, I guess. But I'm left with more questions than answers. Grandma had an older sister that went missing, too. And so did her mom. I don't know how far back this goes. Some of the records just aren't there, but there are a lot of missing eldest daughters in our family tree. I want to believe it's a coincidence. I really, really do, but I don't know if I can. That dream I had a few nights ago in the cottage, I can still smell it. I broke down even more into tears. I'm surprised my mother didn't come into the room from hearing me wailing in tears. I started putting together the pieces from the diary, but I didn't want to believe it. I flicked onto the next page. It was another dream journal, this time even weirder than the last. Something was starting to go horribly wrong. June 8th. Last night's dream. The cottage again. It was even worse than last time. There were cobwebs everywhere, and it smelled sickly sweet like rotten fruit. Only the woman sitting across the table from me seemed unchanged. "What is this place?" I asked. "Your home, soon enough," the woman replied. "Not that I think you'll have much time to spend in it. We have so much planned for you, Leah." From outside the window I heard laughter and the sounds of the forest. "Why are you doing this?" I cried out. I wanted answers. I wanted something, the closure that my mom never got maybe. "A debt as old as time, dear child," the woman replied, "paid in the flesh of the firstborn." "I don't want to die," I cried. I'd never felt so hopeless. What little skepticism I managed to cling to during my waking hours disappears entirely in these dreams. The woman smiled. "Who said anything about dying, Leah?" I realized what was happening. "Paid in the flesh of the firstborn," she said. "Leah was my mother's firstborn. This couldn't be happening. Surely this wasn't true." June 16th. The dreams come every night now. I can't bring myself to write them down. They're getting more solid. Before they felt like dreams, but not anymore. I can smell, taste, and touch everything I encounter. Sometimes it's my waking hours that feel like dreams. There was one more entry. I flicked the page knowing exactly what was going to come. June 24th. She's coming tonight. I'm not ready, but I have to be. I can smell the rotting wood, hear laughter just beyond the walls. This world seems insubstantial now, like a sheer curtain hiding a world of depravity. I don't know. I just don't know what to say. I feel like I should have some last words or something, but I don't. I can't think of a single thing to say. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do. I've just gotten pregnant a few weeks ago with my boyfriend. It's going to be our firstborn child. I can't shake the fear that my baby might be next. The joy of expecting is overshadowed by a chilling dread, a nightmare I can't escape, as I grapple with the possibility that my deepest desire might lead to my greatest heartache. There's a dark side of YouTube that we aren't supposed to see. You'd probably expect YouTube to be an innocent platform for kids to watch their favorite videos, but underneath the surface, there's a twisted side you don't get to see on your front page. I never could have guessed that searching dashcam would result in me finding the most disgusting videos on the internet. I was just looking for reviews on a dashcam I planned on buying, but after scrolling for a while, I found mostly useless reviews. That was until I came across one video that stood out significantly from the rest. It was different, but not in the way you'd think. It was uploaded very recently, titled To Dashcam. The channel name was made up of random characters and had a default profile picture. I knew it wouldn't help my search for a review, but my curiosity got the better of me. I clicked it, not knowing this would be the biggest mistake I'd ever make. The general scene was of a young child sitting behind a rectangular table with nothing behind him except a door. He sat there completely silent for almost a minute before giving a shy greeting. He went on to explain details about a dashcam, but with very vague descriptions. "It has a good screen, it's very strong, it'll last a long time." I was kind of freaked out, not exactly the type of review video I was expecting. Something was off about it. Before the recording came to an end, the child sat in silence once more for another minute or so. My first instinct was to believe this was some kind of test video to test a camera. I only realized how much worse the reality was when I checked the channel profile. Clicking on the profile itself didn't reveal much. The About Me section and banner were completely empty. However, there was one other video on the channel, titled One Dashcam. It was uploaded just 1 minute before the second video. The preview photo was nearly identical, just an image of the same child sitting on the chair, so I wondered if they were testing multiple dashcams. Just as before, I allowed my curiosity to get the best of me and opened the second video. This is when I realized this wasn't really a video at all, and instead was one frozen frame from the other clip. A soft ringing noise grew louder during the first few seconds, followed by a robotic voice reading several facts about, apparently, the child. Name, Rodney Wilson, age 9, mother location, jail, father location, deceased, cause of death, beaten, burned. Several moments of silence later, the video ended. A horrible feeling grew in my gut. Surely this wasn't what I thought it was. I told myself it was some cruel joke, but even if it was, finding humor in something so disturbing was completely uncalled for. It looked like an advertisement to sell the child. There must have been a hint somewhere of what the purpose of the videos were, but one thing about the account stuck out to me. A number of people were already subscribed to the channel. Not many people, but more than seemed reasonable for an account made only a few hours earlier, with random numbers as the name. I didn't question the subscribers too much, since they all looked pretty normal at a glance, though seeing them gave me an idea. The best way to find out what these videos were was simply to wait for more of them, so I myself subscribed and left it at that for the time being. I never could have guessed what I had just gotten myself into. A good portion of the day passed before I logged back into YouTube to check on the account from earlier, though to my surprise it had been deleted. No more subscription, no more videos, that was it, until the next morning. I was met with a message on my YouTube account. It said, "You have subscribed to Eyes Below the Sun study," then provided 2 links, but at the end of the message it specified, "Please remember no one has been harmed." Due to the sender of the message being from another account of mixed numbers, I knew this must have come from the person behind the other profile, or at least someone connected to that person. This was the first time I considered that maybe some kind of study was being conducted, but I had to wonder who the subjects were, the people in the videos, or the viewers. Whatever the case, I had told myself I'd wait for more videos, and here they were, so I checked them both out. Each one mimicked the general layout of the videos before. One was of another child sitting in the same empty room, vaguely reviewing some kind of electronic. The other was once again a screenshot of the first, with a robotic voice reading information about the child. Name, Richard Brown. Age, 12. Mother location, deceased. Father location, unknown. Cause of death, strangulation. Some hours later, the account was once again deleted. For several days, there seemed to be a clear formula at play. I'd be sent a message from a new account with 2 videos. One link would be of a child reviewing something, and the other would be a screenshot of the review video and information about the reviewer. Then, at the end of the day, the account would be taken down. Something was horribly wrong about this. While unusual, I was still waiting for a clear reason to think something was illegal about this. Maybe it was some kind of troll or prank. Besides, the freeze-frame videos were reading details that I slowly suspected were made up. After almost a week, I received another message. But this time, something was different. After clicking on the first link, it went to a video called One Pendant, which described some facts about the child as the previous videos did, but the robotic voice had been replaced with the recording of a woman. It read, "The child's name is Jessica. She's 7 years old and both of her parents are at unknown locations. Due to her refusal to follow procedures, appropriate action will be taken." Odd. What does appropriate action mean? I clicked the next link and saw the usual setup of a child, presumably Jessica, sitting at a table. She began describing a pendant in a vague manner, which was no surprise. However, in the middle of her description, she suddenly stopped and began to weep. A woman standing out of view calmly asked the girl to keep her eyes on the camera, but she continued to cry for a while before asking, "What did you do to my mom?" While the second person in the room wasn't visible, I could guess she began moving around since the video started shaking. Suddenly, the camera was pushed to the side, exposing a door to the bathroom. The woman then revealed herself by entering the now visible second room, taking a moment to shuffle through a cabinet before returning with a pair of scissors and a knife. I wasn't able to get a good look at the person, but a large wound on her face was impossible to miss. It started at the corner of her mouth and carved halfway to her ear. The video then ended. This must have set off some kind of chain reaction, because the next 2 or 3 days had children who were all acting strange. They'd try to describe whatever product they were assigned to, while fighting back tears and glancing at something in the corner of the room out of view. I didn't know what to do. It's not like I could call the police. There was nothing illegal going on that I could see. Until I received the next link. There was only one link that day to something called Zero Eyes. But what could it be? I opened the video and was met with an empty room. Apparently the host hadn't been seated yet. Intense commotion could be heard outside, in the form of footsteps stomping down the hallway towards the door and muffled screaming, apparently from a kid. When the door opened, a man burst through holding a child in his arms. Tape had been put over the boy's mouth, and his arms were tied behind his back. After kicking the door shut with his foot, the man practically threw the child onto the table with so much force that the camera fell over. The scene had changed from the usual table to the corner of the room where the previous children had been uncomfortably glancing at. Laying on the floor naked was the girl from the pendant video, motionless, with wounds covering her entire body. Dried blood streamed down from her eyelids that had been savagely cut or ripped off. While she'd clearly been there for several days, her eyes very slightly vibrated. The child was dying, but still alive. Suddenly, text on a black screen popped up with the words, "Do not be alarmed," for several moments before the video ended. This was the last straw. I wrote down the numbers of the account and the video name before rushing out of my house to the local police station. I can only imagine how frantic I looked when I got there. Even trying to speak was challenging, and it didn't help that the officers impatiently demanded I calm down. Eventually, however, I managed to tell them what I had seen, and they requested I sit tight while they checked out the video themselves right there. Maybe 15 minutes passed before the officers returned to me. Unfortunately, I didn't get there fast enough. The account and video had already been deleted. I didn't lose hope, however, because I knew I'd get another video the next day, so I promised to return when the proof of this nightmare arrived. That night, I didn't sleep well, since the mental image of the mutilated girl was stuck in my brain. I couldn't check my messages on YouTube fast enough when I awoke, and what I found was the following. "Hello. You have been unsubscribed to Eyes Below the Sun study. Link 1. Please remember no one was harmed." Upon clicking the link, I gasped at the title of the video. It was a 0 immediately followed by my YouTube username. With a terrible sinking feeling in my stomach, I sat back and watched the scene play. What followed was the regular room with no one visible once again. However, someone standing behind the camera slowly walked into view and positioned herself exactly where the children had sat. I recognized this woman as the one from the One Pendant video, the woman with the facial wound. She glared into the camera for a moment before saying, "I'm sorry you didn't understand what I set out to do, but it's not my responsibility to stop your imagination from forcing conclusions. I have made a point of telling all families that no one was hurt, and that is the truth. Bodily pain is an illusion. I'm not responsible for your understanding or lack of understanding of this basic concept." The woman then walked back to the camera and shut it off, ending the video. This was the last I heard of anything relating to these series of events. I did make an attempt to return to the police that day with the video directed at me, but it had been deleted before I got to the station. However, a chill ran down my spine when I realized not only was the video missing, but my entire YouTube history was erased. It was as if the channel, the messages, and the videos never existed. With suspicion in their eyes, the officers asked me to leave the station, warning me about wasting their time. I could barely contain my panic as I returned home, desperate to find some form of proof. I tried to forget about the whole ordeal, and even deactivated my YouTube account. But one evening, as I was getting ready for bed, I received an email notification. Hesitant, I opened it. The message contained no text, just an attachment titled, "Last Video, MP4. I played the video, and it was footage from a security camera placed in what looked like my living room. It showed me watching the previous videos on my laptop. At the end of the video, the same woman from before stepped into frame, walking towards my front door. The video ended, but outside, I heard a soft knock. My wife went missing 15 years ago. Today I received an anonymous message. I don't like to talk about what happened 15 years ago. I don't even like to think about the fact that on January 7th, 2008, Sarah Collins, beloved member of the community, left home to the store and was then never seen again. It was a huge case back then. Everyone seemed to want to know what happened to her, but no one was more desperate for answers than I was. Sarah and I had been married for 5 years. I knew as soon as I met her that I wanted to spend the rest of my life with her. She had one of those smiles that just lit up a room. That's why it was so hard to believe that such a beautiful, successful woman had seemingly disappeared. They hadn't even recovered her body. 15 years later, and they still didn't have a shred of evidence. Not a tire track, or even a fingerprint. Nothing. The police put out an appeal, but no one came forward. Somehow, not a single person had seen her. It was like she had just vanished without a trace. I think about Sarah a lot. I could never quite bring myself to take down the photos of her from around the house. Sarah's bright face still smiles down at me from every room. There's one photo of her, from our wedding day, that I really love. Looking at it is like looking straight at her. It captured her perfectly. 2 days ago, I found myself staring at it, really getting lost in the details. Her eyes, the way the corners of her mouth were lifting into a smile, the small dimple on her left cheek. I was looking at it so intently that I almost didn't notice the phone ringing. It was the landline phone, which was odd, as no one ever called me on the landline anymore. It was all mobiles nowadays. When I looked at the caller ID, it was an unknown number. I shrugged and picked it up anyway. It was probably just the bank calling to confirm something. The call took a moment to connect, but when it did, I heard a strange rustling sound on the other end of the line. Hello? I wasn't in the mood for any prank callers. Is anyone there? Hello? Daniel? Daniel, thank goodness I finally reached you. The voice on the other end of the line was a woman's voice, shaking and breathless. Daniel, it's me. It's Sarah. Are you there? When I heard her name, it was like my heart had stopped beating for a moment. Sarah. My Sarah. But that was impossible. Sarah had gone missing 15 years ago. Whoever this was, it was not my wife. I don't know who you are, but you're not Sarah. I hissed into the phone coldly. Stop calling this number. I had dealt with a lot of these calls, especially when Sarah first went missing. Con artists, fraudsters, anyone who wanted to manipulate a grieving husband. I knew none of them were my wife. No, Daniel, wait, you have to listen to me. It's me. Sarah, you have to believe me. She was sounding shrill and desperate now, even a little hysterical. The lengths that people go to in order to sell a lie is astonishing. Why are you doing this? I asked angrily. It's been 15 years since my wife disappeared. What do you want from me? For a moment, the woman on the other end of the line didn't respond. I was beginning to think that the call had disconnected when she finally spoke. Daniel, please, it's me. It's your wife, Sarah, the woman begged. I'm telling the truth. It's me. She continued to plead, but I'd had enough. I wasn't going to listen to this liar anymore. Don't call this number again, I firmly told her, hanging up. I thought that would do it. She wouldn't be likely to call me again. I assumed it was all over. The next day, I had asked a friend to help me repair my plumbing system. He was a good friend. I'd known him since college. He had been there for me when Sarah disappeared, getting me through it. We were both taking a break, catching up on the important events in each other's lives, when my landline phone began to ring again. Sorry, I have to take this. It might be important, I said, getting up from my seat and making my way to the phone. I noticed that the call was coming from an unknown number, just as it had the day before. I didn't make a connection right away. After all, it could have just been the bank this time around. I picked up the phone, and I heard the same rustling sound. It was unsettling in a strange way. I almost felt like I had heard it before. I just couldn't put my finger on it. Hello? I was already beginning to get a good idea of what this call was, and I wasn't happy about it. I told you not to call this number. Daniel, thank goodness I finally reached you. The very same words that she had said the day before. Daniel, it's me. It's Sarah. Are you there? It was undoubtedly the same woman. I don't have the time for this, I hissed into the phone. I know you're not Sarah. Stop calling me. I hung up the call and walked back to my friend, who looked confused. Who was that? He asked me. It was some prank caller trying to pretend to be Sarah, I told him, rolling my eyes. I thought that I had left it all behind. I even changed my phone number. I don't know how this woman got hold of my new one. Pretending to be Sarah? My friend echoed. That's really strange. Did you tell anyone about it? Like the police? No, I shake my head. There's no need. It's just someone trying to cause a bit of drama. They probably want money or something like that. I made it clear that was the end of the conversation. I didn't want to continue talking about it, bringing up harmful reminders of the past. I woke up the next day, not expecting to get any more calls from the unknown number. I made it very clear that I wouldn't be participating in her charade. However, I was quickly proven wrong. As soon as I started to walk downstairs for a glass of water, the phone rang again. I thought about letting it ring, but I had a better idea. I was going to issue a much stronger warning to the caller, even threaten to get the police involved if the calls wouldn't stop. That would scare her. I was certain of it. I picked up the phone, hearing the very same eerie rustling. I couldn't explain it, but it made a shiver run up my spine. Finally, the call connected. It was just the same as the other times, the same pathetic monologue. Daniel, thank goodness I finally reached you. Maybe it was even a recorded message. Daniel, it's me, it's Sarah, are you there? If you don't stop calling this number, I'll have no choice but to involve the police, I told the caller. This is harassment. If you want money, try conning someone else. Before I could even give the woman on the other line a chance to answer, I hung up the call. Hopefully this would show her that she wouldn't be manipulating me. I could see right through her elaborate scam. I was sure that my warning would stop the calls coming in. I was so sure of myself that when I was woken by a loud, persistent ringing sound the next morning, I didn't even think to connect it to the unknown number calls. I first assumed it was my alarm, waking me up, but when I turned to look, I saw that the alarm hadn't gone off yet. That was when I reached the conclusion that it was the landline phone. I rushed down the stairs, wanting to tell the caller that I would be taking police action, wanting to catch out the desperate scammer. Fortunately, I got down there in time and picked up the phone. Holding it to my ear, I heard that creepy rustling that I had become familiar with. It still made my heart beat faster, just for the few seconds until the call connected. Daniel, thank goodness I finally reached you. The usual message of hysteria came through the phone. I was well used to hearing it by now. Daniel, it's me, it's Sarah, are you there? I gave you a warning. I said that if you called again, I would be taking legal action. I spoke into the phone, loudly so that whoever was on the other side would be sure to hear me. You've gone too far now. I have to do something about this. I waited for the woman to respond. Daniel, no, it's me, I'm not lying to you. I would never lie to you. Daniel, it's me, Sarah, your wife, it's me. I can't stand the high-pitched whine of her voice. You're not Sarah, I told her bitterly. I know you're not Sarah. I will be taking action. Goodbye. I hung up the call for the final time and placed the phone back. I know that woman wasn't Sarah. I know for a fact she wasn't. I know it because on January 7th, 2008, Sarah Collins, beloved member of the community, was murdered. And I was the one who murdered her. Sarah was an incredibly beautiful woman. I couldn't believe my luck when she first started showing interest in me. I didn't exactly have a lot of experience when talking to women, and I was ecstatic that someone like Sarah had chosen someone like me. I loved her, for every single second of our marriage. I loved her, even when I found out that she was cheating on me. I'd accidentally stumbled across a string of romantic messages between Sarah and one of her co-workers. She was planning to leave me for him. My Sarah was planning to leave me for him. I couldn't have that. She was so beautiful, so bright, so full of life. I couldn't lose her. I just couldn't lose her. So I murdered her. I didn't have to think about it for long. It was the only way that she would be mine, only mine forever. If she was dead, she would never leave me. She would always be my Sarah. When the police arrived, I made up an elaborate lie that she had gone out to run an errand and never come home. That very same lie ended up on the headlines of the national news. I didn't know if I would even get away with it. But a year passed, and then another year, and then another. 15 years passed, and no one ever saw through me. I was about to walk back upstairs when I heard a small tapping at the window. Click, click. That was the sound of the window opening, and that's when I heard it. Rustling, right here in my own house. Rustling that paralyzed me with fear and sent my mind into a state of panic. Then I heard her. Daniel, thank goodness I finally reached you. The voice was coming from inside the house now. Daniel, it's me, it's Sarah. Are you there?